Coin traders, what's going on? Thanks for joining me for the show. Looking at fetch AI, FET on that ticker. Nice little rebound day for all of crypto and especially FET as well. So especially after this big bottom came in right around the 160 level, looking at a gain so far of over 30% as we look at current prices of about 211 right now. So most of crypto has been looking at pretty significant retracements since the high. So with FET right now, we're looking at a top come in for the trend at 34850. So from there, pull back to the bottom here over 50%, 54%. So that's pretty standard right now for what we've seen across crypto. So we know that this is a pretty normal retracement based on the retracements that we've seen across the board. And even looking at a Fibonacci right now from the low here that started at the beginning of February down around the 50-cent mark. Huge gains, obviously, to the upside, which is what's pushed FET AI into the spotlight, which we knew would happen based on strong narratives for AI cryptos. So even right now, a pullback and retracement, finding very nice support coming off of the 61.8% Fibonacci retracement. So if we actually look, this was a nice period of support as well, kicking off this 12-period exponential moving average. Obviously lost the exponential moving averages right now on the daily. We will talk about those on the longer charts in a second. So right now, looking at very strong support, didn't unfortunately hold a nice close on top for the daily, but that's okay because crypto trades 24/7, so not necessarily super important, especially given the long lower shadow on this candle. But on this Fibonacci, if we look, the 38.2 was a big point of support, especially coming in right in between the 12 and 26 lines. So we know that this period is actually, or excuse me, this level is actually going to be pretty strong resistance, especially because these exponential moving averages will likely have a continuation of the downside right around that level, especially since they've already had this bearish cross on the daily. So this level is going to be extremely strong resistance right now, especially due to this strong support for the close on the daily, coming in right at 235. Now, unless things globally do get a lot worse, we are still looking at a big oversold bounce, especially after such big retracements across the rest of the crypto space. Obviously, with Bitcoin, we could still see farther continuation of the downside, which would have negative impacts and effects on crypto. So it is still possible, but right now we are looking at oversold bounces for most of crypto. So if we can break on top of this level, hopefully hold it as support, then could be back on our way once again. This would be an ideal scenario and setup for bulls, especially given the fact that we did hold a big retracement and bounce off of this 61.8%. So after we actually wicked down, nice buying to actually confirm it. And that's why we're up over 30% right now in about 24 hours here. So obviously do think we have found max capitulation for this sell-off here, and especially given the fact that we have seen the biggest amount of bearish selling pressure coming in the basically a very long time, essentially since February of last year. So basically in over a year, we have been seeing our biggest amount of bearish selling pressure. So we know that that is one of the big capitulation signs, and especially now given the volume so far. So still about 5.5 hours on the daily candle to close. Ideally, we'd love to see this body actually engulf the bearish body of yesterday's candle, and still on the following day, see a lot more continuation as well with nice bearish volume, kind of like we've seen on this run up. But we will see based on global conditions and what the rest of crypto space is doing, like we talked about. As we do talk about resistances too, have to point out this strong trend line that we actually have based on previous resistance and also support before actually seeing this bearish huge flush to the downside. So right now that could align with what we're seeing, and especially given the fact that Bitcoin isn't necessarily looking that strong right now, could actually see just a little bit of oversold bounce before another continuation. So like we said, do need to break above 235, break above this trend line, and then also as these EMAs roll down, actually need to break above these as well, because this 50 is actually going to get pretty close to where these 12 and 26s end up flipping. So this is going to be an extremely strong zone, an extremely strong level for the bulls to actually reclaim. If those levels do get reclaimed, then I would expect a lot more further upside. However, if we do see a slowdown and rejection from these levels, then likely more downside is to continue. Now, I want to switch over into the 4-day chart, talk about this for a couple of different reasons, but most notably, I just want to talk about it because we have been holding EMA support this whole time since we actually kicked off our rally back in October. So since the fall, we've actually been looking at a very nice maintaining of an uptrend, especially after kicking off the 12. Now finding support in between the 12 and, the 26 and 50, and then now finding closing support so far in between the 26 and the 12-period EMA. So the fetch.ai is actually one of the only cryptos right now to be doing this. A lot of other ones have been starting to lose the EMA supports on some of the longer trends. So we know that this is a little bit more of an indication of a stronger name, and that's why this is such a nice level of support for continuation, because support in between the 12 and 26 is a very nice indication of a continued upside trend. And so we actually did just start the current candle. Do still have a little over 3 days left. So being that it's a 4-day candle chart, we do know that we have a lot of opportunity for more bullish volume to be coming in, kind of like what we have seen. So as long as we do see strong oversold bounces across the rest of the crypto and also fetch.ai, we are going to be expecting to be reclaiming this 12-period EMA and actually continuing on the uptrend as well to test the upper resistance point right now, coming in at about 275-ish. So if we turn on technical indicators as well, looking at RSI first, huge RSI coming in, peaking out at 92.83, which wasn't actually the high. So we did get a little bit of bearish divergence, lower highs in RSI, higher highs in price. So pullback expected, finding nice support and actually seeing a higher low come in compared to what we found. So higher high on some of the longer term trends is a very good sign as well, especially higher lows on the RSI. So we can actually expect the next leg of upside if we do find support, especially after such big retracements off the rest of crypto. Now looking at stochastic RSI as well, actually heading down, looking like we could get a bearish cross if we do get continuation out of that as well. So being that the stochastic RSI is actually very nicely under the 20 line, would expect another scenario kind of like we found after a bounce. So being that we are finding exponential moving average support, indicators at the bottom about to roll over and setting higher lows on RSI, which also, if we actually zoom out and look at this RSI as well, we can draw a very nice support line that actually indicates and correlates with a lot of the rest of some previous resistance support. We had support as well. So we know that the 53 line is actually pretty, and this is all a zone, obviously. This isn't necessarily a specific level, kind of like we look at with prices, but overall, we know that right now sitting up on a very nice strength line, especially given that we have been finding support with the rest of crypto right now. The next thing I want to talk about, we don't talk about it super often, is the Bollinger Band setup right now. So if we go ahead and turn on Bollinger Bands, effectively what we're looking at right now is a retracement. But if we look at this line in the middle, this is actually the exponential moving average line that correlates with the amount to the upside and downside for this move. So typically we find this when we do see rejection after bouncing off the upper limit for the top Bollinger Band. We do find retracements kicking off the exponential moving average, which right now is exactly what we are seeing on this 4-day chart. So very nice support coming in right at 185, correlating to the support level for this Bollinger Band. Now, keep in mind too that this isn't necessarily a guarantee that from here we're going to actually rally up and see new higher highs. In fact, right now that is kind of an indication that we might actually see a run up in a little bit more longer term consolidation, which wouldn't be a bad thing at all. Keep in mind too, with all these upper wicks, we are going to see that strong resistance coming in about 275. But also, like we said, we are going to see strong resistance before that at right about the 240 level. Now, flipping into the weekly, obviously maintaining support, especially on top of the 12. Very nice lower downside shadow on this nice candle. So if we can see a lot of buying, that would actually shrink the size of the body on this weekly candle, which would be a good sign, kind of like what we've seen on the previous bearish candles as well. That does indicate a lot more of that dip buying and a lot more of that bullish pressure coming in after an extreme sell-off. Now, if we do look at indicators on the weekly as well, like we talked about, higher highs on RSI, but right now we're actually looking at stochastic RSIs, already be in the middle, about halfway to this pullback. So we could still be looking at a couple of weeks of a little bit more sideways price trading, which is kind of like what we talked about based on the indications from the 4-day chart. So that wouldn't be necessarily the worst sign, is to actually see a couple of weeks of inside bar trading, for example, and then sitting tight kind of in this range in between 280 and 240. So we're still not necessarily expecting a huge run-up and rally like what we have seen since the start of April. So do need some time to actually cool off, establish these levels as very nice support and confirm them. And then from there, we would expect a little bit more continuation or farther downside retracements based on what happens across the rest of crypto space. Looking at short-term 4-hour right now before we go ahead and wrap up. Obviously big selling, but we do have a lot more buying coming in. So we are going to have strong resistance right now being formed at 221. Up above that is going to be a strong resistance point coming in right at about the 250, just above the 250 psychological level at 251.20. So a pretty big zone, especially given how these exponential moving averages are setting up. But right now we are starting to see a lot of good signs, especially out of the magnitude of these bullish candles coming off the bottom. Long lower shadows. We are seeing very nice bullish engulfing candles and a lot more continuation, especially out of bullish volume. So if we can see that continue over the next day or two, we are going to get that confirmation that this is going to be a bottom signal, and we are going to be bouncing off of some of those lower supports, especially as long as we break some of these resistance points. Looking at the 12-hour last chart before we do wrap up, and like we mentioned, we are going to see extremely strong resistance coming in about the 235 to 237 level right now, and also that is going to correlate with some of these downside EMAs that have crossed bearish now. So we are going to expect that to be a pretty strong resistive level. So anything from about 220-ish, like we talked on the 4-hour, all the way up to the 250 is going to be extremely strong zone of resistance. And then even turning on the VPVR volume profile visible range, you can see how pretty much this 237 is going to be the start of this huge, extremely strong point of mass. So the likelihood of actually running up and breaking that. But if we do run up to that level, then we would have an opportunity to confirm some of these as supports once again and consolidate, strengthen the move, and then see the next leg to the upside. So that is kind of one of the best bullish cases right now. Overall, we're not expecting that to happen here immediately. But yeah, probably in the coming week, we could expect that as being the bullish scenario right now. Otherwise, rejection from that is likely going to result in a pullback down to about the 180 level. If we do lose that, then that is going to be pretty much bad sign down to about the 116. So overall, should be an interesting week ahead based on what we see. If we're going to see a lot of rejection from those resistance points, or if we can see continued follow through and a lot of buying coming in from this dip, after confirming a bottom based on a bounce from a lot of these supports. The current level that we did find for support is a pretty nice level, especially based on resistance from the previous trend before setting the high right now, the all-time high. So we are looking at about 185 as that nice confirmed support. So pretty good setup right now. But yeah, otherwise that is going to go ahead and wrap up the show on FET, fetch.ai. If you did enjoy the show, please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe if you have not done so just yet. Do appreciate all the continued love and support. Don't forget to drop me a note down in the comment sections below. Issues, disagreements, predictions, all that. Do love getting back to you. Also, don't forget to drop a follow over on Twitter or X at @coin_trades is the handle over there. But otherwise, that is going to go ahead and wrap it up. Stay safe, take care, and I'll catch you back in the next video.